Good morning. So today's lesson is about gaseous exchange. It's in your textbooks from pages 204 to 223. It seems like a lot of pages, but we'll go through it very quickly. It's actually not that lot of work. So if just for a quick overview of what gaseous exchange is basically when, let's take the human as an example, our bodies in our lungs exchange um, carbon dioxide for oxygen. So we want to get rid of carbon dioxide in our bodies, and we need oxygen um, to survive. Most of our processes inside our bodies need oxygen. So that's basically what gaseous exchange is. It's over a membrane how one gas is exchanged for another gas. Just to clarify, if you guys remember in the previous video we did cellular respiration, and that is a chemical process that happens inside the cell, but it has to do with food molecules such as glucose, when glucose is being broken down. Okay, so that is cellular respiration. It doesn't have anything to do with gases. Okay, yes, it uses oxygen, but it's the breaking down of food particles of glucose. And then the actual breathing of us humans and animals breathing, that is actually the physical process of moving air from outside of our bodies to inside of our bodies, vice versa. So that is, yeah, the breathing, cellular respiration, and gaseous exchange are just the three topics. So this, what we're looking at, is gaseous exchange, the exchange of one gas for another over a membrane. Okay, so first thing you need to understand is what the effect of size and surface area has on gaseous exchange. If we look at different types of organisms, your unicellular and small organisms, such as your amoeba, to a complex mammal, such as a dog, an elephant, and a human. The size of the animal or the organism changes. So basically a large organism, like a mammal, which has a low surface area to volume ratio, I will explain this now, has problems with gas exchange compared to smaller organisms. So this is because of the large diffusion distance. Okay, so if you have a low surface area to volume ratio, that means that your surface area, it's a good example. This one's actually fine. Okay, so if you have a low surface area to volume ratio, it means that your surface on the outside is actually smaller than the volume inside. So your volume is usually larger than your surface area. And you want a large surface area of the organism because the larger the surface area, the more gas exchange can happen. Okay, so if you look at a small animal such as a rat, okay, it's not 1 meter by 1 meter, but let's just take this as an example. Your surface area here is 6 meters. So on the sides, in the front to the back, on top of is your surface area. The volume is what is inside. This cube inside has a volume of 1 meter cubed. So the surface area is much larger than the volume inside. So this is very good. This means a gaseous exchange where the exchange of gas through remember the outside, so the surface area in an animal is semi-permeable. Gas can actually go through your skin, well, in most animals and so on. So for something like the rat or the amoeba, it has a very large surface area, so gas exchange can happen at a high rate, can happen a lot. But the bigger your volume gets and the smaller your surface area compared to it, the lower that volume or that ratio will become and how worse it will become, because in this case, a larger animal, the surface area is much larger now at 54 meter squared, but your volume is also much bigger now, 27 meter cubed. So compared, uh, compare this with the first one, it's much easier for a smaller animal to facilitate gaseous exchange than a larger animal. Just remember that. It's basically the ratio between the volume and the surface area. Now here they show you the surface area volume. Okay, so 6 to 1, meaning the surface in this case is 6 times larger than the volume. So this is very good. But in a large animal, if you divide 54 by 27, the ratio is 2 to 1. Okay, so it's basically the volume is half the size of the surface area. So yes, the surface area is still bigger, but it's not as good as this guy, the animal that's surface area is 6 times the size as than the volume. So that's what it's all about. So then we get things like gaseous exchange organs, different animals, different organisms have different types of organs that help them with gaseous exchange. So if you look at a simple animal such as your flatworms, okay, it has, well, it's called a flatworm because it has a flat surface. So it's like its top and its bottom is squished together. So it's very flat. If you look at a cross section of it, so the top is over here, the bottom is over here, and the sides is basically squished. So it's very easy for this animal with its large surface to volume ratio for gas exchange to actually happen just through the skin. Okay, so oxygen can be, you can go inside the animal. I suck with the English now. The oxygen goes into the animal and the carbon dioxide is being expelled outwards. So it's very easy for this type of animal to exchange gases. Then if we look at animals such as your locust, this guy actually has something called spiracles. It's kind of like trachea, which is inside human lungs, where we can, like these little tubes where the oxygen and all the gases are being transported. So they also don't have a blood system. This flatworm also doesn't have a blood system, no need, because the gaseous exchange can happen just through the skin. So with the locust, it's also still a small body size, doesn't need blood, so it has trachea and also spiracles where the gases comes into. So then the gas goes to the organs that needs the oxygen, and then carbon dioxide again is expelled out through the mouth. Then if we look at a larger type of animal like your fish, they are aquatic, so under the sea they have gills, they don't have lungs. So if you look at a cross section of the gill, they have these gill filaments. One of these, they actually do have blood vessels inside. Blood vessels, so you have the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen within the blood. So the blood is in this animal is the system that transports your gases from one area of the body to another area of the body. And just to remind you guys again, we did photosynthesis and everything in the plant. So your gaseous exchanges in the plant is through, or happens through the guard cells. The guard cells create the stomata. So the stomata is the opening where gas exchange can happen. So your carbon dioxide from the outside of the leaf goes into or through the stomata into the leaf where gas exchange can happen inside the cells. And then oxygen leaves the leaf through the stomata or the opening at the bottom, and also your water and so on. Okay, so just for interest sake, here's another example of the different animals. You have your aquatic animals like your salamander. It's semi-aquatic, so it has external gills that helps with gas exchange on the outside of the body. And then you have animals with internal gills, such as your crabs and crustaceans that have their gills on the inside. Like the fish, the same gill filaments, just on the inside of this animal's body now. So then you have your land animals, such as your mammals, that have lungs on the inside of the body with trachea and so on to help with gas exchange. And something like your praying mantis that has also just trachea on the inside, not really full-fledged lungs. Okay, so what you need to know also is for these organs to work and for gas to be exchanged through their membranes, they need a few requirements, these organs. So first of all, as we mentioned, it needs a large surface area. So you want the surface on the outside here, if you can see my arrow, it's very big because it looks like filaments, it's these long projections. It actually increases the membrane area where gases can be exchanged. The filaments are thin, not thick, so that also means gas can go through easily. So that's the second point, a thin surface. They shouldn't be thick. The protection should be very thin. And the fact that it's thin also increases the membrane surface area. Then permeable. Permeable just means that the gas should be able to go through the membrane, and also it should be moist, because a moist environment actually facilitates, helps along the movement from gases from one area of the membrane to the other area of the membrane. Okay, so then organs should be ventilated, meaning there should be an airflow through it. So as with these aquatic animals, even though they live underwater, there is still oxygen and gas inside water. So they still need the gas to breathe. So it should be well ventilated for all these animals. There should be air going through their bodies. Then transport system, meaning blood. Not all of these animals do have blood systems, but there should be some type of transport system, be it trachea or so on. Usually it's blood, to carry these gases from one organ to the other one. And then it should be protected against drying out. So with your aquatic animals, they don't have to worry that in a watery environment, their gills won't dry out. But for animals that are on land, the area, even though these lungs and trachea are on the inside of the body, it's inside actually to make it moist. So your external things can only happen in watery environments or the ocean, because then it can't dry out. With us living on land, with air blowing through it, and you want it to be ventilated, but you don't want it to dry out. Otherwise, this exchange also can't happen of the gas. Okay, so then in humans, what does the human gas exchange system look like? So first of all, we have our larynx that is actually inside our neck that actually captures all the gas. And then from the larynx, it goes through the trachea. Here's the tube that actually carries the oxygen and all gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, through the body. And then from the trachea, it actually goes either to the, okay, in this case, the right lung. They have the picture, right is this side and left on this side. So it either goes to the right lung or the left lung. And then from the bronchus, this thick tubey over here, it goes to the bronchi, smaller tubes in the bronchioles. The side, if you think of a tree, it's like the side branches of this bronchus. Okay, and then way at the tip, I want to have a picture here, is the alveoli. At the very tip of all these bronchioles are the alveoli, which looks like this. So at the tip of the bronchiole are these, let's say, clusters of grapes. That's kind of what it looks like. So one of these round alveoli is called an alveolus, and a couple of them together is called alveoli. And one of these clusters is actually called an alveolar sac. Okay, so basically in between all these alveoli is your blood system. So you have your veins and your arteries and everything supplying blood to these alveoli sacs, or to each alveoli. Here's actually the picture of how it shows you where your arteries and veins are, giving the blood supply, and also where gaseous exchange happens. So each of these individual alveoli is where the gases exchange. You take in oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay, so then go back to this schematic one. This is again a cross section of the lung. So this is what the lung looks like when it's closed. This is just when it's been cut through half. You can see what's going on inside. Here's your heart. It should be a bit to the side, but anyway. The section, okay, yes, are your ribs. Ribs on this side, just cut through. And with around each rib is actually muscles called your intercostal muscles. These muscles are very important because they also help you when you breathe in and out. The muscles constrict and what's the word? Retracts your okay. Your ribs actually moves as you breathe. So either it compresses or goes together, or it expands. That's the word I'm looking for. So your muscles facilitate the movement of your ribs to enable the enlargement and the constriction, or the making smaller of your lungs. Okay. So your intercostal muscles help with breathing, and also the main part or the main muscle that helps with breathing is called your diaphragm. So the diaphragm sits here at the bottom of your lungs, and it's basically a powerful sheet of muscle, and it separates your thorax, your upper part of your body, from your abdomen at the bottom here where your stomach and intestines are. So this diaphragm, we will look at breathing later, but what it does, it can move. So it can either move upwards or it can move downwards. Not really moving, it is fixed to the ribs, but this middle part can either be more bunched up or it can flatten down, depending on what stage of the breathing you are. Okay, so yes, moving on from here. Breathing, okay, so let's look at this in more detail. You either have your inspiration or your expiration. So your inspiration is when you breathe air in, and expiration is when you breathe your air out. Okay, so let's look at inspiration. You inhale the air, it goes through your trachea and into your lungs. So here it shows you what happens. The rib cage expands, the rib muscles contract. So the muscles themselves, they tighten. So when the muscles tighten, they actually move the ribs and it moves outwards. So in this case, the rib cage is enlarging the space inside the rib cage. It needs to become bigger because remember, you're inhaling air now. So imagine like your lungs are like a balloon. You are getting more air inside the balloon will expand and become bigger. That's why your diaphragm as well goes down. It flattens out. So it goes down as this big balloon is actually filling up with air. So then your rib cage also expands, it becomes larger, it makes more space for this inhaled air. Okay, so the words I keep forgetting is the diaphragm contracts, tightens and moves downward. Okay, so then when you exhale air, air goes out of your lungs now, so the balloon is becoming flattened. The diaphragm goes up because it's pushing all the air back out your mouth, and then your rib cage actually contracts back in. So they get smaller and the rib muscles relax. So all these muscles in between the ribs, they just relax, and it means the rib cage falls back into place, the area where it was, back to the starting position. Okay, so as I mentioned again, the diaphragm relaxes, and actually when the diaphragm is relaxed, it's in this semicircle half moon position. Okay, so it only flattens out when it moves down and when you inhale, but the diaphragm is in a half moon shape and in the relaxed state when you breathe out. When there is technically air still in your lungs, but there isn't any extra air in your lungs. Okay, so then when you are breathing in and out, chemically, what is happening in your body? What is happening with the gas exchange and the transport of the gas you just won? Okay, again, let's look at air inspiration. The air comes into your mouth through the trachea and into either one of the lungs, but let's go to this side. And what happens at the alveoli over here where all the blood supply is? So if you look even closer, let's look at one of these alveoli in detail. Here's the alveoli. The air just came in, so the air you breathe has oxygen in it. And what happens is the oxygen goes into, or remember, it goes through the membrane, is being exchanged from a high concentration. There's a lot of oxygen in the alveoli now. So it goes from a high concentration and then passively, without energy, it moves from this high concentration to a lower concentration because this blood now does not have any oxygen. It has carbon dioxide that we'll get to it later, but the carbon dioxide is being released into the alveoli, meaning this area does not have any oxygen. Okay, so this now has oxygen because you breathe in, and now from a high concentration to a low concentration, moves through the membrane passively without energy and enters the red blood cells and binds with the hemoglobin, those protein structures of the red blood cells, and then is being transported to the rest of the body. So now this blood is oxygenated. Oxygenating oxygen, meaning it has oxygen. Okay, so the oxygenated blood now flows to the rest of the body. Let's go with this cycle. The red represents the oxygenated blood. The heart keeps pumping, so now it pumps this oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. It goes to the brain, it goes to the intestines, your liver, pancreas, and it also goes to your muscles. What happens? Let's take a closer look. From your oxygenated blood is now in the oxygen is obviously in the blood now, and the oxygen, because this concentration again is higher in the blood, goes from a high concentration to a low concentration in the muscle cells. Let's take the muscle, for example. So this is the bloodstream, this is the actual body cell or the muscle cell. It goes now through the membrane, high concentration to a low concentration, and now the oxygen leaves the bloodstream into the body cells. This means that the other blood, as the blood continues through the vessel, it becomes deoxygenated. All the oxygen is being released into the rest of the body, so these cells are deoxygenated. And also while it's deoxygenated, meaning no oxygen, it also gets carbon dioxide, because remember with your cellular respiration, what happened when we all the glucose in the food and things were being broken down, it used the oxygen, but carbon dioxide was released as a byproduct. So now this carbon dioxide goes into the bloodstream and actually inside the plasma of the blood, and now this is being transported back to the heart, back to the lungs. So what happens inside the lungs? Let's take a look at this picture. Your carbon dioxide now is being released back into the alveoli for you to breathe out. Okay, so then you exhale it. I'm just thinking if there's something else I forgot to mention, but I think that's it. And that's basically how the entire process works. Okay, so how do we know that we actually exhale carbon dioxide? There's a very cute experiment to see. If you guys remember our old friend lime water. Lime water it's clear in color, but it turns white in the presence of carbon dioxide. So what's happening here is you get air from the outside, this experiment shows. So then this, just from say in a classroom or just general air comes through a tube into this vial, into the lime water, and it can become slightly white because remember the air we breathe in does have carbon dioxide a little bit. So then the air goes further. You place your mouth here in the middle. There's an opening here in this experiment. You place your mouth there, then you inhale. So then you inhale most of this air, but then if you exhale again, there is a way of controlling which way the air goes anyway. But when you exhale into this vial, and the lime water is supposed to turn white because you just expelled carbon dioxide into this bit. So then the air goes out again. So there's a simple way of just showing that, or even some experiments I've seen, you don't even use this bit. So, but this is just to show that general air doesn't have a lot of carbon dioxide. It only turns slightly white, but it will become milky when you, as the human, exhales air into lime water. So then it becomes white as milk, and then you know, okay, so there's a lot of carbon dioxide that we as humans create due to gaseous exchange. Okay, then just lastly, we have something called homeostatic, the homeostatic control of breathing. In general, when we're just sitting or resting or whatever, we breathe normally. We don't know we're doing it. Our brain is actually controlling everything. We don't have to worry. So yeah, the normal rate is that. But then when we start doing exercise, what happens? So when we exercise, we use our muscles, and you remember with cellular respiration, food is being produced and so on. So muscle cells, when we use our muscles, our respiration increases and we need more oxygen. So more oxygen is used up and our carbon dioxide rate increases. So more carbon dioxide is being produced because of exercise. So then the brain detects increased levels of carbon dioxide, usually the hypothalamus. Signals then sent to the lungs to tell us, okay, increase our breathing. So our breathing automatically starts to increase. So then breathing rate and the volume of the air you take in into your lungs increases. So this means that the more gaseous exchange takes place, okay? Then the brain also tells our heart to beat faster so that all this oxygen we just put into our lungs is pumped, the blood with oxygen is pumped to the lungs for gaseous exchange so that this can happen inside the lungs so that more of the blood can become oxygenated, and then more oxygenated blood gets to the muscles and more carbon dioxide is removed. And why do we want it to be removed? Because if you remember, we're still in the respiration, lactic acid can form in our muscles if we don't have enough oxygen, and that can be very painful. So we need the oxygen to get rid of all this carbon dioxide. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's what gaseous exchange is all about.